Good morning, Facebook. Welcome back to another episode of TLG Live. I am John Yin, the host for Thursday episodes. Welcome back. Don't worry, I don't have Nori with me this week, so no disruptions, no interruptions, I promise. Anyways, this week I'm going to be answering the question: are you running a Ponzi scheme? And I think if you have to ask that question, you probably are. But anyways, so Ponzi schemes. What is a Ponzi scheme for those that don't know? Named after this guy named Charles Ponzi. I guess he was the first guy to do this, or maybe he's the first guy to get caught by the SEC. But basically, it's a scam where you raise a bunch of money from some investors, and then uh, to, I guess, pay those investors off, you raise more money from new investors, but you tell your old investors that the money that they're receiving, these are just distributions from the company's profits. You don't tell them it's coming from new investors, right? So you keep doing that, raising more money from new investors because that's the only way that you could pay off your old investors, until one day it just blows up because it's unsustainable, right? You can't keep raising new money from new investors forever. I think the most famous example of a Ponzi scheme that I can think of is Bernie Madoff, right? So uh, I think he was raising like billions of dollars or something, and the only reason he got caught was he just ran out of time. Eventually, just caught up to him. And then today, I read in the news there was this actor in Hollywood that was running a $200 million Ponzi scheme. He was telling people that he had contracts signed with Netflix and HBO when he really didn't, and he was using that to raise money from investors. And then when it got time to pay his investors, he would just raise new money and use those funds to pay off his investors. You can't do that. That's fraud, obviously. Um, so if you're thinking about doing something like that, don't do it. But first of all, so what are some red flags for a Ponzi scheme? Right? If you're an investor out there, what are some things that are gonna tip you off and tell you, you know, maybe I shouldn't invest in this deal because the guy is running a Ponzi scheme? I think the biggest red flag, the number one thing to watch out for, is a sponsor that's promising crazy or even impossible returns. So if you see a deal where the guy says, "I guarantee you'll get 100% return on investment in the first year," or "No risk. This investment has no risk because you're going to get X amount of returns in X amount of time." That's a huge red flag that you know that's unsustainable. How can that possibly be the case where this company could generate that much money where they could you know pay you so much capital within the first year? So red flag number one, crazy, impossible returns, or no risk, or using phrases like guaranteed return, um, things of that nature, or no risk, or using phrases like guaranteed return, um, things of that nature. Red flag number two, a little bit more subtle, but if you think about the basic structure of a Ponzi scheme, it makes sense. But if you're an investor in a deal and there are super consistent returns, super consistent distributions to you each quarter, each month, or whatever, that could be a sign that you're in a Ponzi scheme, right? Because in the real world, a company doesn't have consistent, you know, profits each quarter, consistent revenue each quarter, right? Markets change, things change. So the money that gets distributed to investors, that's obviously going to fluctuate. So if you're seeing super consistent distributions, that's probably a sign that, the money coming in isn't exactly what the sponsor is telling you. It's possible that it's, new investors. They're using new investors' capital to pay you off, which is Ponzi scheme. So that's red flag number two. Red flag number three is if the structure of the deal or if the sponsor strategies are super, super complex, where you can't really understand how the company's making money. You can't really understand the sponsors' acquisition strategies and exit strategies, or maybe they're not willing to share those strategies with you. Um, that's a sign that there's something else going on in the background, right? So those are the three red flags for your investor to look at when you see a deal or someone's asking you to invest in a deal. Um, so how do you avoid it, right? If you're a sponsor or if you're an investor, how do you avoid um, being seen as a Ponzi scheme or investing in a Ponzi scheme? So if you're a sponsor and you don't want to be seen or you don't want to run a Ponzi scheme, then don't do it, obviously, right? But the easiest way to go about, you know, um, making sure everything's compliant is, have all your material information about your offering disclosed to your investors in a PPM, right? So if you're doing a Reg D offering, you're going to need a PPM, private placement memorandum. So put all of the relevant information that you need to give to your investors in that document so that all your investors are aware upfront of all the risks, they're aware of your strategies, they're aware of the distribution plan, they're aware of everything that they need to be aware of before they invest. If you're an investor, read the freaking PPM. Right? Read the documents that the sponsor is giving you to understand, what their plan is, understand all the risks involved. Um, Read that document. So, but that begs the question, right? What if someone is doing a Ponzi scheme and they just put that in the PPM? Like, I'm going to pay you off with new investors. Can't like, right? Is that possible? That's a good question. Probably not. I mean, it's like asking, can you agree in advance to be the victim of fraud? Um, I don't think that's enforceable. That's probably not an enforceable contract, and that I don't think that'll protect you as a sponsor if you're going to tell people that you're basically running a Ponzi. If anything, that's going to make things worse because you're basically just telling everyone that you're running a scam, and an investor's going to read that and probably report you to the SEC. Um, so so that's the thing that investors and sponsors should be focusing on is what's outlined in the PPN as far as distributions. How is money going to be paid to the investors? And what we put in our documents is very clear. There's section 4 of our PPM talks about distributions. We have a defined term called distributable cash, right? And that is calculated, or it's up to the sponsor to calculate, but it's defined as after withholding expenses, debt service, and reasonable working capital and reserves. After that, after you withhold that, that's what is allowed to be distributed to your investors. So if you see something else, if you see something different in that wording, where it like leaves it open, the sponsor can basically pay whatever they want to the investors. You know, be careful with that. Um, that's all I got for you today. I hope I educated you on Ponzi schemes and I keep saying Ponzi. It sounds weird now to me. Uh, but anyways, if you're a sponsor, hope this is educational in trying to avoid being put in that situation where you are potentially running, operating a Ponzi scheme. And if you're an investor, hopefully you learn about what to look out for when you're analyzing deals. Thank you for tuning in. Today is Thursday, so that means we got another episode of TLG Talks, where Gene interviews a person on YouTube today at noon. Go check that out. We also have our next rookie camp is going to be April 20th and 22nd, so a couple weeks from now, actually. Limited to 15 spots. So if you've been thinking about it, if you missed out on the previous ones, this is your chance, right? You get 6 hours of me and Gene, where we basically go over everything you need to know to do your first syndication. So if you're interested in that, go sign up on our website, trowbridgelawgroup.com. As always, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next week.